This is the deepest place on Earth, nearly 11,000 meters down. No sunlight, crushing pressure, and we know almost nothing about it.
Imagine standing on the deck of a small fishing boat, surrounded by nothing but the endless blue of the southern Indian Ocean. Beneath your feet lies an ocean so deep that even today, large portions of it have never been completely mapped by humans. It is a place where sunlight dies within a few hundred meters, where pressure crushes almost everything that dares to descend, and where countless valleys, cliffs, and underwater mountains remain hidden from every satellite and every research expedition. Before we uncover what happened in these mysterious waters, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and help us reach our goal of 5,000 subscribers. It was here, off the remote coast of Western Australia, that three seasoned commercial fishermen witnessed something that should not have existed according to everything modern marine biology believes it knows. What they saw was not a whale, not a shark, and not any known creature officially recorded by science. Even more unsettling was what happened after they reported the encounter. Instead of receiving an explanation, they were met with an uncomfortable silence from experts whose entire careers revolve around understanding the mysteries of the ocean. Sometimes silence says far more than words ever could. The incident unfolded in March of 2019, nearly 90 kilometers off the isolated coastal town of Esperance in southern Western Australia. Esperance is the kind of place that feels forgotten by the rest of the world. Most people outside Australia have never heard its name, and even many Australians rarely think about it. Yet beyond its beautiful beaches lies one of the most intimidating stretches of ocean on Earth. The turquoise coastal waters quickly surrender to an endless expanse of deep sapphire blue as the continental shelf suddenly disappears into the abyss. In some places, the seabed drops more than 4,000 meters, creating an underwater wilderness that is almost completely unexplored. Floating above those depths means drifting over nearly 2.5 miles of freezing darkness, a place where almost no human has ever looked directly, and where countless species may still remain undiscovered. The three men aboard the fishing vessel were not tourists searching for excitement or amateur sailors eager for a good story. They were professionals whose lives had been shaped by the sea. Their names have been documented, although they have requested limited public exposure since the encounter. They had left port before sunrise, hoping to catch southern bluefin tuna during the autumn migration. It was a routine trip, the kind they had completed hundreds of times before. The weather was calm, visibility was excellent, and the steady rhythm of the ocean suggested that the day would be ordinary. For experienced fishermen, these quiet mornings are almost comforting because they know exactly what to expect from the sea. Nothing about the first few hours hinted that they were about to witness something that would permanently alter their understanding of the ocean they thought they knew. Shortly before 11 o'clock, the boat's sonar briefly detected an unusually large return at roughly 600 meters below the surface. No one paid much attention. Sonar frequently picks up schools of fish, floating debris, or layers of changing water temperature. After more than 3 decades working these waters, the lead fisherman had learned that strange sonar readings were rarely worth worrying about. He barely looked at the display before returning to his work. But only moments later, something happened that no amount of experience could explain. The sea itself seemed to change. There was no dramatic splash, no towering breach, and no violent wave crashing against the hull. Instead, the water began moving in an unnaturally subtle way, as though an immense force far below had slowly shifted position. A broad circle nearly 40 meters across darkened around the boat, the brilliant blue surface gradually transforming into a deeper, heavier shade. It looked less like a disturbance and more like the ocean itself was quietly making room for something enormous, rising from the darkness below. Then it appeared. Directly beneath the vessel, clearly visible through the astonishingly clear water, an immense dark shape drifted silently into view. It was not a passing shadow cast by clouds overhead, nor was it a trick of sunlight reflecting through the waves. All three fishermen saw it at exactly the same moment. Every conversation stopped instantly. Every movement froze. Years of experience taught them to recognize every large creature likely to appear in Australian waters, yet nothing beneath them resembled anything stored in those memories. Their fishing boat measured just over 11 meters in length, but whatever was beneath them extended well beyond both ends of the vessel. One fisherman estimated it measured somewhere between 15 and 20 meters long. Another believed it was even larger, perhaps 25 meters. The oldest and most experienced among them refused to estimate its size at all. Instead, he simply said that in 32 years spent working the Indian Ocean, after seeing whale sharks larger than buses, massive southern right whales, and pods of sperm whales feeding only a short distance from his boat, he had never encountered anything remotely comparable. Every known giant of the ocean fit comfortably within his understanding of marine life. This creature did not. It belonged to an entirely different category. Something unfamiliar, something impossible, and something that left three hardened fishermen standing in complete silence, staring into the deep as though the ocean had revealed one of its oldest and most carefully guarded secrets. The credibility of the encounter begins long before the creature ever appeared beneath the boat. Extraordinary stories often fall apart when the people telling them lack experience or expertise. This one does the opposite. The men aboard that fishing vessel had spent much of their lives on the ocean, learning to recognize every movement of the sea, every familiar silhouette beneath the waves, and every species that belonged in those waters. The captain, whose identity remains partially protected and whom we will simply call David, had worked commercially off the coast of Western Australia for more than 3 decades. He held advanced maritime certifications, completed marine science training as part of his professional qualifications, and had accumulated thousands of days at sea. The ocean was not simply where he worked. It was an environment he understood with an instinct developed over a lifetime. His longtime deckhand, Brendan, had spent years working beside him after gaining experience on commercial trawlers operating throughout the Great Australian Bight, one of the least explored marine ecosystems on Earth. The third witness was David's young nephew, still new to offshore fishing and only beginning to learn the trade. Ironically, his lack of experience made his testimony especially valuable. Unlike the older fishermen, he had no reason to explain away something unusual as a rare whale or an unfamiliar shark. He reacted with the confusion and disbelief of someone witnessing the impossible for the first time. Investigators later interviewed each of the 3 men separately, comparing every detail of their recollections. Their descriptions were not identical, but that became one of the strongest reasons investigators considered the accounts credible. Human memory rarely reproduces events word for word, yet all 3 witnesses independently described the same enormous body, the same unusual movement, and the same overwhelming sense that they had encountered an animal unlike anything they had ever known. None of them sought publicity. None attempted to profit from the story. Instead, they appeared deeply unsettled, as though they had seen something that permanently changed their confidence in what the ocean contained. What disturbed them most was not simply the creature's size, but the way it moved. Through the remarkably clear water, they could make out a massive body colored in dark gray and brown tones, its surface changing subtly as powerful muscles shifted beneath smooth skin. The front portion widened gradually before tapering into an incredibly long body, giving it a broad, flattened appearance, unlike the rounded profile of a whale or the familiar shape of a shark. As David searched for words in later interviews, he struggled to compare it to any living animal. The closest description he could offer was that it resembled an enormous ribbon gliding effortlessly through the sea. Yet even that comparison failed to capture the sheer scale of what floated beneath the boat. Its movement was almost hypnotic. Whales propel themselves by driving powerful tail flukes vertically through the water, while sharks sweep their bodies from side to side with a recognizable rhythm. This creature seemed to follow neither pattern. Instead, its entire body flowed in one slow, deliberate wave, each motion smooth, controlled, and astonishingly efficient. Nothing about it suggested panic or urgency. It moved with the confidence of an animal that had never evolved to fear predators and had never needed to waste energy in pursuit of speed. The fisherman watched in complete silence as the giant shape completed a slow circle beneath the vessel, taking nearly half a minute to drift from one side of the boat to the other. During those precious moments, Brendan managed to pull out his phone and record several seconds of footage before the creature calmly angled downward and disappeared into the darkness. There was no sudden dive, no frantic escape. It simply faded into the abyss until the blue water swallowed it completely, leaving only an empty surface behind. For several minutes after it vanished, nobody aboard the vessel spoke. David would later admit that those silent moments haunted him far more than the sighting itself. Throughout 32 years at sea, he had built an internal catalog of every creature he expected to encounter. In less than a minute, that lifetime of certainty had collapsed. The experience, he later reflected, felt like discovering a color that had never existed before, a phenomenon so unfamiliar that the human mind struggled even to describe it. Brendan's phone footage, although shaky and brief, preserved enough detail to reveal a massive dark form moving beneath the boat. It was not cinematic evidence, nor was it perfectly clear, but it showed exactly what one would expect from someone trying to record an extraordinary event while simultaneously deciding whether it was safer to keep filming or leave immediately. The mystery deepened once the physical evidence was examined. The boat's sonar system had automatically stored data from that morning, allowing analysts to review exactly what had appeared beneath the vessel before the visual encounter occurred. Rather than showing the scattered signature typically produced by schools of fish or changing water layers, the recordings suggested the presence of a single, substantial object moving hundreds of meters below the surface. Analysts estimated that whatever produced the signal possessed considerable mass, far exceeding what would normally be expected from most known marine animals encountered in those waters. Additional questions emerged after inspectors noticed several unusual marks running along the hull of the boat. Although the scratches caused no structural damage, their parallel spacing and smooth appearance suggested that something large may have brushed against the vessel without the crew even realizing it. When researchers later reviewed Brendan's footage, at least one marine scientist privately acknowledged that the movement visible in the video did not comfortably match any officially documented species. Yet, when public statements were eventually released, the explanation became noticeably more cautious, proposing that the fisherman had probably seen either an unusually large oarfish or an optical illusion created by multiple animals moving together. Whether those public conclusions reflected certainty or simple scientific caution remains one of the most intriguing questions surrounding the entire encounter. As news of the encounter quietly spread beyond the fishing community, many expected marine scientists to provide a straightforward explanation. After all, if anyone could identify an unknown creature caught on sonar and briefly captured on video, surely it would be the experts who dedicate their lives to studying the ocean. But the response that followed was far more complicated than anyone anticipated. At first, there was almost no response at all. That, by itself, was not especially surprising. Fishing crews report unusual sightings every year, and most never become the subject of formal investigations. Yet as Brendan's footage found its way into marine biology circles and reached researchers specializing in deep water ecosystems, the silence began to feel different. It was no longer the silence of an unanswered report. It became the silence of professionals who had seen something difficult to explain and were choosing their words very carefully. Eventually, two public explanations began to circulate. The first suggested that the fishermen had simply encountered an exceptionally large oarfish, one of the strangest fish known to science. On paper, the theory seemed reasonable. Oarfish are remarkably long, ribbon-shaped animals capable of reaching extraordinary lengths while moving through the water in graceful, undulating waves. To someone unfamiliar with marine life, the description sounded convincing. But when investigators compared that explanation with the details provided by the witnesses, the similarities quickly began to disappear. Oarfish may be impressively long, yet they possess remarkably slender bodies, rarely thicker than a human torso. They do not have the immense bulk described by the fishermen, nor do they displace the enormous volume of water suggested by both the eyewitness accounts and the sonar data. More importantly, an animal of that shape simply could not have produced the massive sonar signature recorded beneath the vessel. Whatever the fishermen observed appeared to possess genuine mass, not merely unusual length. The second explanation proposed that there had never been a single creature at all. Instead, researchers suggested the possibility that multiple smaller animals, perhaps swimming together beneath the boat, had created an illusion of one enormous organism. It was a cautious hypothesis, but one that proved difficult to reconcile with the evidence. Schools of fish constantly shift shape as individuals change direction, producing irregular patterns and constantly changing outlines. The witnesses, however, consistently described one continuous body moving with deliberate precision. Even the brief phone footage appeared to show a unified form rather than a loose collection of animals. David, whose career had been spent reading the ocean almost instinctively, dismissed the idea without hesitation. After more than 3 decades at sea, he had watched countless schools of fish, bait balls, dolphin pods, and every other familiar marine formation imaginable. He insisted that what passed beneath his boat behaved like a single living animal and nothing else. What made the scientific response even more intriguing was the contrast between private conversations and carefully worded public statements. According to researchers familiar with the initial review, one marine biologist privately acknowledged that the movement visible in the footage did not comfortably match any documented marine species known from Australian waters. Yet, when official comments were later released, the language became noticeably more cautious, emphasizing conventional explanations while avoiding any suggestion that the encounter might represent something genuinely unknown. Whether this reflected scientific skepticism, professional caution, or the natural reluctance to speculate publicly remains impossible to determine. What is clear, however, is that similar patterns have appeared throughout the history of unusual marine encounters. Extraordinary observations are often discussed behind closed doors with curiosity, while public statements remain firmly anchored to the safest available explanation. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the entire mystery is not the creature itself, but the place where it appeared. Australia possesses one of the largest ocean territories on Earth, an immense maritime domain stretching across approximately 8.15 million square kilometers. Hidden within that vast expanse are underwater mountain ranges taller than many peaks on land, steep continental slopes that vanish into abyssal trenches, and hydrothermal vent systems supporting ecosystems that scientists did not even know existed until relatively recently. Large portions of these deep waters remain mapped only in the broadest sense, High-resolution surveys cover only fragments of the seafloor, leaving enormous regions effectively unexplored. In such an environment, it becomes easier to understand how large marine species, especially those spending nearly their entire lives at extreme depths, could remain almost completely hidden from human observation. History provides plenty of reminders that the ocean continues to surprise even experienced researchers. During a single deep-sea expedition off Western Australia in 2015, scientists documented more than 100 species previously unknown to science, despite working in waters that many considered reasonably well-studied. Decades earlier, in 1977, the Japanese fishing vessel Zuyo Maru accidentally recovered the decomposed remains of an unidentified marine animal off New Zealand, an event that sparked one of the most debated zoological controversies of the 20th century. The carcass possessed features unlike any immediately recognizable marine animal, leading some researchers at the time to speculate about extinct marine reptiles before later studies proposed more conventional explanations. Regardless of which interpretation proves correct, the incident demonstrated just how little certainty still exists when unfamiliar animals emerge from great depths. The ocean has repeatedly delivered discoveries that challenged scientific expectations, reminding us that its deepest regions remain among the least understood environments on Earth. Nor was the Esperance encounter entirely unique. Over the past several decades, scattered reports from the same broad region have quietly accumulated in official files. Commercial fishermen working the Great Australian Bight have described unusually large serpentine animals moving across the surface. Research vessels conducting geological surveys have occasionally recorded unexplained sonar contacts hundreds of meters below their ships before continuing with their primary missions. Recreational divers exploring the edge of the continental shelf have surfaced describing immense, dark forms passing silently through the blue beneath them. Individually, each report can be dismissed as an isolated mystery. Together, they begin to suggest something more interesting, a recurring pattern concentrated within one of the deepest and least explored marine environments on the planet. None of these accounts alone proves the existence of an unknown species, but collectively they raise a question that science has yet to answer. If experienced witnesses, operating across decades and under vastly different circumstances, continue describing remarkably similar encounters in the same remote stretch of ocean, perhaps the greatest mystery is not why these stories exist, but why so little effort has been devoted to investigating them systematically. The question everyone eventually asks is also the only question nobody can answer with certainty. What exactly did those three fishermen witness beneath their boat that morning? After years of discussion, reviews, and speculation, the honest answer remains remarkably simple. Nobody knows. That uncertainty is precisely what makes the Esperance encounter so compelling. It is easy to dismiss extraordinary stories when they collapse under scrutiny, but this one has stubbornly resisted every attempt at a simple explanation. Instead, it has left behind a collection of clues that point in several possible directions without allowing any of them to become a definitive answer. The most cautious scientific possibility is also the least sensational. Perhaps the fishermen encountered a known marine animal displaying behavior that has never been documented before, or perhaps they witnessed an individual that had grown far beyond the sizes scientists currently consider normal. History reminds us that nature has surprised researchers many times before. Giant squid were once treated as little more than sailors' legends until living individuals were finally photographed in the 21st century.